Hi, my name is Lynn Roston. Today's Christmas baking day on Sweet Sensations. We're going to make a Christmas dessert lasagna, red velvet shortbread, and Christmas cherry cookies. For our Christmas dessert lasagna, we'll make a shortbread layer with 3/4 cup of butter, a half cup of icing sugar, 1.5 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of cocoa, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of red food coloring. It'll have a cheesecake layer made with 1 cup of icing sugar, 1 package of cream cheese, 1.5 cups of Cool Whip, a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and a 1/2 teaspoon of peppermint extract. We'll make a pudding layer with 2 boxes of white chocolate pudding, 3 cups of milk, and green food coloring. Then we'll top that with 1.5 cups of Cool Whip, 2 cups of mini marshmallows, red and green M&Ms, and Christmas sprinkles. And our Christmas cherry cookies will be 1/2 cup of butter, 3 ounces of cream cheese, a 1/2 cup of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract, 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to start with our Christmas dessert lasagna. And like any lasagna, it's going to be a layered dish. And our first layer, or the base of the dessert, is going to be a shortbread layer. So I have 3/4 cup of room temperature butter here. And we're going to sweeten that with a 1/2 cup of icing sugar. Now any shortbread would do, but because this is going to be a Christmas dessert, I think the perfect shortbread base for this is a red velvet shortbread. So to start to turn this into a red velvet shortbread, I'm going to add a tablespoon of red food coloring, and you want to just start to beat this in on low, or you're going to have red sprinkles all over your clothes. It splashes out here. We're using 1.5 cups of flour. We're going to just put in 1/2 for now. 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of cocoa. Because red velvet treats always have a combination of red food coloring and cocoa. The cocoa tones down the brightness of the red food coloring and darkens the whole thing up a bit to give you that characteristic red velvet coloring. And we need 1 more cup of flour. So it's not much cocoa, just a tablespoon, but it's still enough to give just a little bit of chocolate flavor to this shortbread. So you just want to beat that until that all comes together into a dough. Let's see, what can we get rid of? These things. just gather this up. So you've got that nice red velvet color there. Looks much more festive than just a regular shortbread recipe, I think. I'm just going to take half of this for now. Because normally you would take this mixture now and press it down into the bottom of a 9x13 pan. Just press it down evenly. And then you would bake that at 350 for about 20 minutes. So other than that layer, the rest of this dessert, put a bit more flour in there, the rest of the dessert is no bake. But you do have to bake that bottom layer, so I have one that's already baked because you have to bake it and cool it before you pile any more layers on there. So I have one that's ready, but just to show you how versatile this part of the recipe is, because it's just a shortbread recipe, you can also use it just to roll it out and make cookies. And then you can just cut them into whatever Christmas shapes you would like. A variety if you like. I just have a Christmas tree here today. But whatever shape or a bunch of shapes you would like to use. These make great Christmas cookies because, like any shortbread, they're rich and buttery. So we have a red layer. The next layer is going to be white because it's going to be a fluffy cream cheese layer. So we need 1 package of room temperature cream cheese. I'll just beat that a little by itself at first. Now we're also going to sweeten this one with icing sugar, this time 1 cup of icing sugar. Now we're going to flavor it with a little bit of vanilla. And some peppermint extract. I'm just using a touch of that. Now to make this nice and fluffy, we're going to add Cool Whip. Want 1.5 cups of Cool Whip. So the flavoring of this dessert is up to you. Peppermint desserts are really popular at Christmas time, sometimes called peppermint season. So you could use all peppermint, about a teaspoonful. The peppermint extract is quite strong. You have to be careful when you're using it. That's why I combined mine with vanilla, and I just used a touch of peppermint in mine. I just wanted to have just a little hint of peppermint flavor. So I didn't use too much of it, but you could use any combination of the both, or just all vanilla, all peppermint. Whatever your preference is. Heat in that Cool Whip. Scrape that down. And we'll bring over the base that I prepared earlier. So when you bake this, before you bake it, I docked it with a fork, so just poked holes all over it with a fork, because something like this can bubble up and you want it to stay flat. So we have a white layer and a red layer. Like I always say, the easiest way to customize things for different occasions is to use color. And this works out really well because it's a layered dessert, so we're going to stripe this one like a candy cane. My daughter loves candy canes, but they have to be just red and white or she won't eat them. But I like my candy canes to have a green stripe too. I think they look better with the green stripe, so we're going to stripe this dessert today. All the colors of a candy cane: red, white, and green. And I also, before I baked this, I docked it. And I also, you can grease the pan, but I like to line it. Underneath that base is just lined with a bit of parchment. Because I've made this dessert a lot of times, and sometimes the bottom, the shortbread base, can kind of stick to the bottom in places, and I hate when you cut a piece and the shortbread base is broken, so I just put that little layer of parchment on the bottom, and then you know for sure it's not sticking, so you can cut nice clean pieces. So we'll move this aside again. We'll start on our green layer. A nice big bowl for this one. So I have 3 cups of milk here. So I want this to be green. So I have green food coloring, and I'm just going to fill up the cap here. It'll be enough to make a nice green color. Grab a whisk. So this is going to be a pudding layer, and I have 2 boxes here of instant pudding. The smaller 4 serving size boxes. And I'm using white chocolate. So if you like, you could use pistachio pudding, because that's already green and you wouldn't have to color it. And I love pistachio pudding. I love using it in pistachio squares and other desserts, but I didn't think the flavor of pistachio really, there's my whisk, didn't think it really went with the other flavors like the red velvet shortbread, and especially if you're using the peppermint. But white chocolate goes with peppermint and red velvet, so I wanted to use that. So the only white chocolate pudding I can find is, it's Jell-O. Comes in a box like this. It's just Jell-O instant pudding, but it's sugar-free. For some reason it only comes in the sugar-free variety, but it's really nice pudding. We eat it all the time here at home. But if you didn't want to use that, I imagine vanilla pudding would work just as well too. I like the white chocolate. So you're just going to just whisk this together so it starts to thicken up a little. Normally 2 boxes of pudding would use 4 cups of milk, so we just used the 3, so it's going to be nice and thick. Bring back our dessert again. So we're going to carefully spoon this out, keeping all these layers separate. So if you wanted to, you could just use your own favorite recipe for shortbread if you didn't want to go with the red velvet. But I think it adds a lot to the dessert. Spread that one out. Like I said, the pudding layer will be nice and thick. You can see it's thickening up there already. Now the Cool Whip, I think the recipe says a cup and a half, but you're not going to measure the Cool Whip. Just whatever you have left from what you put in the cream cheese layer, you have that left to put on the top. So again, spread that out, excuse me, carefully so that you don't disturb the pudding underneath. If you didn't want to use shortbread underneath here, you could probably use kind of a thin layer of red velvet cake. Now we have one more layer to come. I have 2 cups of mini marshmallows here. I'm just going to scatter over the top. Just makes the dessert thicker, gives another layer, adds another texture. And I think the marshmallows in the Cool Whip just kind of look like little snowballs there, which is perfect for Christmas dessert. So that looks pretty, but like I said, you have to use color to customize things, so we need some more red and green here. So I have red and green. These are pretty little Christmas sprinkles, little holly leaves and berries, but they're great to add. See, that instantly looks Christmas now, and you add the red and green colors on top there. They're great for all kinds of Christmas cookies and desserts. And I also have some red and green M&Ms. I have regular size and mini ones here. So fit between the marshmallows. And if you didn't want to go with candy and sprinkles, chopped up red and green cherries would do the same thing. So now all you have to do, like I said, it's no bake except for the shortbread layer. So you just have to chill this in the fridge for about 3 to 4 hours before you try to cut it. And if you're making this and serving it for a party or a supper or something, I would just wait. I would put assemble it all, put the marshmallows on, but I would wait until just before you serve it to add, especially these M&Ms. Once they hit the whip, the colors tend to bleed a little bit. So it looks better, you just put them on just before you serve it. So that's our dessert lasagna and the red velvet shortbread. I'm going to clean up, and after the break, we'll make our Christmas cherry cookies. Okay, we're ready to start our second type of cookie. So for this one I have a half cup of butter and cream cheese. 3 ounces of cream cheese. So when you open your block of cream cheese, that's an 8-ounce block. So just cut it into 8 equal pieces and throw in 3. That's 3 ounces of cream cheese. And replacing some of the butter with cream cheese is going to give these cookies lots of flavor and help to keep them nice and soft and tender. Cream the butter and cream cheese together for a minute. Now we can add that 1/2 cup of white sugar. And I like to flavor these with almond because I'm going to be using cherries, and I love almond and cherries together. The recipe says 1/4 teaspoon. I'm going with a whole teaspoon because I love it, but however much you like. One cup of flour. About 1/8 teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of baking powder. It's all very simple to make. You don't even need a lot of ingredients, which isn't the case with a lot of Christmas cookies. So that's all there is to the dough. So this is a very soft cookie dough. Bring over a cookie sheet. I always line my cookie sheets with parchment, but for this recipe, you either want to line your cookie sheet with parchment or use an ungreased tray. A lot of times you have greased cookie sheets, but for these, just an ungreased cookie sheet. So I'm going to take this very soft mixture and just start rolling it into small little balls. So besides the actual cookie dough being easy to make, the actual preparation for these is very easy because you don't even need a rolling pin or any Christmas cookie cutters. Again, so easy with festive color, going with red and green sugar. So this is just coarse colored sugar that you can pick up at the grocery store or the bulk barn. The grocery store usually has your standard red and green colors. Go to your bulk barn if you're looking for some other colors. So you're just going to roll them completely in the sugar, and then you're going to bake them at 350 for about 12 to 13 minutes. And don't overbake because you want them to stay soft, because this is going to sort of be like a thumbprint cookie, but we're not making any indentation in the cookies. We're just putting them on the cookie sheet just like this and letting them bake. And then after the 12 to 13 minutes, they'll be done, but they'll still be soft. And then you're going to take, I've glazed cherries there. So you buy them, usually come in tubs, or you can buy them in bulk. I've just like the candied cherries, come in red and green. So when the cookies are warm, as soon as they come out of the oven, you're going to press your cherry down into the center of the cookie. So they spread out a little while they bake, but not a whole lot. They just kind of puff up, and then as soon as they come out, you take that cherry and press it down into the center, and it makes its own little nest in there. And you could use all red cherries or all green cherries. I like to put green cherries in the red cookies and red cherries in the green cookies, so that they both have the red and green in each cookie. And then during the break, I'm going to melt about a third of a cup of white chocolate chips that I like to drizzle over the top. So we'll take a break, come back, and then we'll drizzle the two types of cookies. Welcome back. So once your cookies are baked and you have your cherries in there and the cookies are cool, about a third cup of white chocolate chips will do it. And I just put mine in a small freezer bag here, cut off the end. And then you can just drizzle some on top of your cookie. And now these cookies also have all the colors of a candy cane, red, white, and green. And then I melted extra white chocolate to decorate my Christmas trees too. So just to keep it kind of simple and elegant with the red velvet cookies, I just topped them with the white chocolate, and then I put some white coarse sugar on there to look like snow-capped trees, and then I put them on my tray surrounded with marshmallows, just so that they kind of look like they're in the snow. And then here's what the dessert lasagna looks like when you cut it. So with the cookies, once the chocolate sets up, the cookies are already cool, so once the chocolate sets up, you're all set to just store them in airtight containers in your cupboard, or they both freeze well. And we've made two festive cookies that, like I say, are really easy to make, but yet look nice and festive. And the dessert lasagna, all the good things that apply to any lasagna apply to this one. Fairly easy to make. It makes a big pan, so it feeds a crowd, and best of all, you can make it well in advance to let you relax and enjoy your time with your family and friends. So just to review what we used for our Christmas treats today, we made a Christmas dessert lasagna with a shortbread layer of 3/4 cup of butter, a 1/2 cup of icing sugar, 1½ cups of flour, a tablespoon of cocoa, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of red food coloring. And that recipe can also be used just to make your standard shortbread cookies. The cheesecake layer was 1 cup of icing sugar, 1 package of cream cheese, 1½ cups of Cool Whip, about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and a 1/2 teaspoon of peppermint extract. The pudding layer was 2 boxes of white chocolate pudding, 3 cups of milk, and green food coloring. We topped it all with 1½ or the remainder of the tub of Cool Whip, 2 cups of mini marshmallows, red and green M&Ms, and Christmas sprinkles. And our Christmas cherry cookies were a 1/2 cup of butter, 3 ounces of cream cheese, a 1/2 cup of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract, a cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I hope you enjoy both these festive cookie recipes. And if you're looking for a Christmas dessert that comes together really quickly, but will disappear even faster, then be sure to try this recipe. So I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you come back next time for Sweet Sensations.